Okay, so let's get into it today. We've got some, we're going to do some designing, and we'll see how we go. Yeah, Ray says it was Dropbox causing me issues last time. I've paused my Dropbox. I've paused Google Drive. So nothing should be uploading. Maybe the kids are watching Netflix or something. Anyway, let's crack on. And if, like I said, if it's really bad in 5 minutes and it doesn't get any better, then we'll I might have to do a hard reboot and I'll come back in 5 minutes or whatever. All right. Okay. Where do I start? Over here. Here's my slides for today. I'm going to be redesigning your t-shirts live. So, excuse me, this is a list of stuff that people sent in. Maybe I should say if the screen share is blurry as well and you can't see that, then we will have to reboot. So let me know if you guys can kind of make out what's going on here. But this is a list of designs that people sent in. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I've picked out 4 designs, which I think would be most helpful for me to really tackle. I'll explain why as we get through to get into those designs. So if there's time at the end of the session, if we have a bit of time left over, then what I'll do is maybe have some time to go through some of these designs and give you my comments. But obviously with 30 odd designs, simply too many for me to kind of redesign each one and go in detail. So I've just picked out a few that I think are going to be most useful and helpful for us in this session. So, all right. So let me pull up which one we're going to tackle first. Oh, I have a couple of principles first. Oh, here we go. I have some housekeeping first. I forget what I've done. So, yes, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Newsletter sign up, michaelessick.com/subscribe to get the resources. And we're going to work on 4 main designs today. We might have time after that to do some stuff. And obviously, as usual, you can ask questions and I will answer them on the live stream as we go. So just ask away. Now, as far as how I tackle these designs, I'm going to try at least with the first one to try and recreate it and do what I've done, how I would recreate this design. Depending on time, we might find that there's not really time to do that with all of them, but I have prepared a few kind of, here's one I made earlier kind of thing. So we can maybe show you those and hopefully get a few of the principles across. Okay. The main t-shirt design principles that you'll see me trying to execute on are simplicity and clarity, or you could say simplicity for clarity, because really you want to make sure that design is simple and clear and it works on a t-shirt. That means doing things like minimal variety of colors. So we like to keep our colors fairly limited. A layout, a positioning that's easy to read and to understand, so not complicated, not too complex, and graphics that are clear, by which I mean, you can see things are not too small or too detailed, and things are just, obvious. And also a style that matches the market. And as I get into some of these examples, you'll see exactly what I mean by that. With all of these designs, and the reason I've picked them is that they have pretty roughly defined markets that we can go after, and therefore I've got a kind of hook and an angle to create something off the back of. So okay, without further ado, let's get into it. So the first one here is, I can't remember who this came from because I don't think I took names on the form, but someone sent in this one. I'm into fitness taco in my mouth. So this is a fairly popular phrase. You've probably seen it around, maybe variations of it for different foods and stuff. So the reason I picked this design, the reason I thought this might be an interesting one for us to look into. So my critique of this one off the bat, there's at first glance, there's not a lot wrong with this design. I mean, it's simple. Clarity, it is simple and clear. The joke is obvious, and the graphics work with the text. I think what kind of the reason I wanted to pick this and recreate it is there's not there's some kind of mismatch here between the font and the graphic. I think the graphic looks to me like a kind of clip art piece that's kind of been dropped on, and the font has this kind of effect. Hello, darling. What's up? Daddy's doing his trick.
I just can't wait to tell you this.
What? What do you want to tell me?
I've moved my bedroom.
Moved your bedroom?
Yeah, my
Okay.
bed somewhere else, and also the
The what?
and also the drawer where I put my books are somewhere.
Okay. All right then. Thank you for that. I'll see you later. And close the door. Thank you. Okay, sorry about that little interval there. Where was I? It's my daughter telling me she's rearranged her bedroom. Yeah, so I think there's something we can do here. The other thing I thought was flood of comments about she's so cute. She is very cute and very well behaved. She's obviously crept past the guard on the door there. Thank you, guys. She is very, very cute and well behaved most of the time. So yeah, let's get back to the t-shirt design here. So yeah, what I did was, after looking at this, I kind of Googled around to have a look at some other designs on this to see what we could find. And I think this is probably the most popular one. I think this is Crazy Dog Shirts. It's probably like the best-selling version of this design. Don't know whether they were the first to do it or what, but as you can see, it's very simple. I would say that there's kind of a fitnessy like vibe going on here. I don't know whether it's the fact that it's on a kind of grayscale sports style t-shirt, but there's something that kind of, and the kind of font they've used, it's almost a kind of collegey sports kind of font. And what I've found when looking through other designs is there's a lot of people just doing the same thing, which is to say text, picture of taco, and that's it. And there's very little attempt to really tie the subject of fitness in with this subject of tacos. I found this one here where there was someone who's done a taco that's lifting weights, which is fine. I don't think it really works too well as a concept, but I thought there was something we could maybe do here. So let me fire up my Photoshop and I will show you what I started with and what we ended up with. So if I share, get rid of that, share my screen. Here we go. So I started here with thinking about how we could tie tacos and fitness together somehow, and thinking about how kind of, you got the shape of the taco, which kind of fits the kind of shape of a bicep. So whether there was something we could do there, and then I kind of moved on to this idea of lifting a taco, like lifting a weight or something like that. So from there, I did this kind of concept sketch. Hopefully you can see that. So I think what I was thinking here is trying to make the most of the canvas, and whether we could do something that was kind of around this, weightlifting kind of idea. So that's the sketch I've done. I have gone ahead and then off the back of that, I did a more polished kind of version of the sketch there, and then I just kind of sketched in what I was thinking with regards to the text layout. So what I think I'll do now is I'm going to take this idea and try and get it to completion or something near completion from this stage, and I'll try and walk you through everything that I'm doing and talk you through it as I go. But hopefully you get the concept. The idea being we do something around the taco and but tie it into fitness. So what I'm thinking is that this font is going to be some kind of fitness style font. It's going to look something like that. So yeah, this is our starting point. I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to hide the text because we don't need that for now. And I'm going to do some Do I want to do that first? No, I think, you know what? Let's get our font kind of selection sorted first. So I'm going to do, what are we going to do here? So let's do a little path. I'm going to do it. Whoa. I'm going to do myself a little circle path to get this thing going. And so the idea is we're going to have fitness kind of curved around here, and we'll have the obviously the graphic in the middle there. So I'm just going to do my text on a path, and I found a font earlier. Freshman is the name of the font. So I'm looking for a font. The kind of approach I want to do is to make this look like some kind of sports or gym like design. So what that usually means is big bold fonts, something like this. So something like that kind of font. Just going to do a little bit of kerning, tweaking here. So something like that for our first one, and then I'm going to duplicate that layer and do our top line of text. I'm into fitness, and then we can shrink that one down. Something like that. Obviously, we need to play with the path just to try and adjust the path. So because we want to kind of, fitness is going to curve around this here, and our supporting text, I guess you could call it, I'm into fitness. We're going to want to have that a little bit less curved, otherwise it's going to look weird. So this needs to fit the curve of the top level of our text, if that makes sense. So I'm into fitness, and then let's do the bottom text while we're here. I find typically the easiest way to do this is to flip the text vertical like that, and then we can rework it from there. So fitness taco. Obviously, we need to increase the text spacing there, and we're going to need to do some work on our path. So typically, I find if you kind of match, I don't know how well you can see, but the blue line to the top of the, no, that's way too broad. Okay, let me first sort that a bit. I can see we're going to have a bit of a kerning issue there with the T. Let me fix that. So what I think would be helpful here actually is if I put some guides in. So if I say I want a guide about here, so what I typically want to do is line up my bottom text so that we're kind of hitting those points. I think what I'm going to do actually is, yeah, okay, let's do that. I'm going to adjust my curvature. Yeah. Oops. So there we go. Something like that. And all will become clear, I hope. Tighten this up. So I'm thinking, yeah, something like that. That might be a little bit too curvy, actually. Let's bring this up a bit. So I would not say we're not really going for like a gym logo look, but something that kind of, at least says gym or fitness or something like that. It's going to look something like a gym style design. Okay. Should have adjusted the font size there before I got going. Oops. Font size, not the kerning. Okay, so as you can see, a bit of trial and error as I get the text to do what I want it to do. But it's getting there. Okay, so our rough kind of layout is there. I'm into fitness, taco in my mouth. So I think what we should probably do is we should change the background color, because I think this isn't really going to work on a white. I think we're going to want to change this out. See if there's any comments coming in here. Good font choice, says B&A. Angie says, so cool. John says, am I the only one that creates original shirts? I doubt it, John. If you're referring to this design, then yes, of course, this is a design that's been done, or I should say a phrase that's been done many times. Obviously, this version, this concept is new. I mean, I'm just treating this as a lesson in design, less so about, concepts and what kind of designs you create. I would recommend you go for original stuff. That's the best way to build a kind of long-term business from this. But if someone came to me and said, Michael, we like your work, we'd like you to create some designs, here's a few of the phrases we'd like you to use, and I was commissioned to do some designs like this, then this is how I'd approach a design like this. So what we're really talking about is concepts into designs, rather than the whole idea of what designs you create in the first place, if that makes sense. I'm sure I've created lots of designs on phrases that have been used before. I do agree that if you're going after phrases that are especially popular, then it's not necessarily always the best way to go, because it's going to be more competitive. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But there can be times where you might have a fresh take on something that would be useful. I just noticed I did something and didn't explain what I was doing. So I've changed the background to gray. Let me get rid of that. And what I think gray kind of shirts are kind of like the example we looked at previously is the best kind of background. I think that looks like a sporty t-shirt, a gym t-shirt or something like that. So that's what we're going to go with. So what I did just then was I found my illustration layer, the layer with my artwork on, and I've drawn a little line connecting the two edges. So before I did that, it was open-ended, and then after I've done it, I've drawn those up. And this is why. What I'm going to do is I want to fill that whole layer with white, so that we're going to have that standing out against this backdrop. So let me show you what I mean here. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to put it underneath that one. Whoops, no, that is not what I wanted to do. Where did I go wrong? Okay, I think I forgot to select inverse. So, okay. There we go. That's kind of what I wanted to do. So the reason I'm doing this will become clear shortly. There's a little bit there that's not quite filled in. So now we've done that, I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to add a stroke on this. Basically, what I want to do is have the illustration, the line work of the illustration, I want it to be gray. Or in other words, I want it to match the color of the t-shirt. And in order to do that and for the illustration to still show up, we need to have this border around it. So if I go here, I can now make this gray. And now if I add my text back over the top, what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to make this white, and I'm going to add a big fat stroke around this so that it kind of eats into the illustration a bit. We might want to block that out in a minute. But hopefully, as I just make these guys white text as well, you can see kind of what we're going for. So I think this obviously needs some tightening up in various places. I'm not really happy about that text, and we've got some kerning issues going on, especially here. And I wonder if we can actually just make the text make this layer a bit bigger. Something like that. So I think, yeah, I think we're making a bit much of this illustration. It doesn't need to be quite as big as it is. So as a kind of workaround, I can just increase the size of the text around it. So as it stands, not finished, but hopefully the concept is kind of clear. Let me just see what kind of comments we've got going on here. Wolfland. Just curious, why bitmap and not vector? Because I'm a Photoshop kind of guy, and I'm a bit too wedded to Photoshop to really change at this point. I can use Illustrator, and I have used Illustrator to create designs. I just find I'm in my comfort zone in Photoshop, and there's very few. I know technically it's better if your images are vector, and it means you can do a lot more with them. However, at the kind of resolutions I work with and the style I work with in Photoshop, I can actually take these and whack them into Illustrator and turn them into vectors and not lose any quality, really. So I guess my point is that Photoshop does everything I need it to do. Doesn't actually, doesn't. I don't have any issues with using Photoshop. But if I could go back 10 years ago, I can see the benefits of being native to Illustrator and to vector art instead. But I don't think it's a huge issue if you know what you're doing. Angie, what about a giant exclamation mark behind in red? I'm going to do something in a second here, Angie. You might create the similar kind of effect. John says, I keep forgetting that I've been a designer for 20 years and I have wicked ADHD. If it's been done, I don't do it. All my phrases are 100% original. It pays off big time. Yeah, absolutely, John. I think if you're going to do something original, it means you're first to the party, and then that means there's much less competition. So absolutely. Once again, this is not a session on ideas. It's a session on taking a concept, or taking a line or a phrase or a concept, and turning it into an effective design, which can be all kinds of different ways you can do that. AAAW, I don't like the hand intersect with the taco word. Okay, you mean like the shoulder intersection? Yeah, I can see that. I don't know if that's improved since you made that comment. Chuck says, wish you had that kind of creativity. I think Mitch is talking to John there. Punnybone, do you use a tablet for drawing? So I did the sketch on my iPad in Procreate, and then I brought it over into Photoshop. And Ron says he uses both. I guess that's Illustrator and Photoshop. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good to have a working knowledge of both bitmap and vector softwares, and whatever works for you. If it gets the job done, and very much that's kind of my philosophy. I think is if you can create the output that you need to, then how you get there doesn't really matter. Of course, there's quicker ways to do things, and there's more effective ways to do stuff. But generally, I'm pretty. I'm less bothered about the tools. I'm more interested in the output and the end result. Okay, I think concept is there, but the design is clearly not finished. I think for sake of time, and because I want to get through another 3 of these designs. I think what we should do is I'll show you the one I created earlier. We'll see how it compares to this one. And then I'll try and explain kind of what I did, how I did it, and then we'll start cracking on with some of the other ones as well, because I'm just aware we're about halfway through here and I've not even finished one design. So if we're going to get through some more, then we need to get cracking. So let me see if I can find the my finalized version of this. Okay, I think this one is it. Okay, so this is my kind of, yeah, semi-finalized version. Maybe we can line these up side by side. Or I can pull this one out. If I pull it out, you can't see it. Okay, we'll just have to flick back and forth between them. So, okay, let me make this a little bit bigger. And so this is my kind of, yeah, there's the one I was just working on. This is kind of where I took it when I had a bit more time to do so. So what I've done here is I've added this starburst kind of thing behind the taco, as you can see, the kind of starburst effect. So that just kind of draws the attention into the illustration. I've messed around with the text a little bit. So I've made some of the text a stroke or a border rather than just solid white. I think that just kind of varies it a little bit more. And I've added, I don't know how well you can see, but I've added some kind of weathered texture over the top, which is kind of a final touch that I would usually add to a design like this, just to kind of polish it off and finish it. I'm not that pleased with this design. I think the concept is okay, but I think it needs tweaking, and I haven't had time to really add any color onto it, which I think could make things pop, because I think the illustration of the taco is not as clear as it could be, and I think if we went in and added some color there, that would really make things work a lot better. But I think as a concept, if we go back to the kind of the original design, or we go back to the original point I was trying to make, which is here we've managed to kind of combine the taco element and the fitness side, and we push them together to do to come up with an original take on it. And I think it looks like a gym or a fitness type design. It looks appropriate for someone who's maybe working out in the gym, and it kind of has that jokey element to it. And of course, that doesn't mean it has to be worn by someone who's working out in the gym or is even into fitness, because it can be ironic, and it could be worn by someone who really doesn't like fitness and never goes to the gym but really likes tacos. But the graphic at least kind of says, hey, this is some kind of gym fitness related idea. So hopefully that makes sense. If I just get rid of Photoshop and head back to my slides, and I'll pull up the next one here. Okay, so that was the old, the kind of original. I think we've at least created something that's a bit more original and is a more interesting approach. So this is the next design I pulled out. Again, I'm not sure who this one came from. It's from Bright Eye on Instagram. So I guess the reason this one appealed to me, so this, if you can't read it too well, it says Sawtooth Valley Gathering, Stanley, Idaho. So I don't really know anything about the design here. I don't really know what it's about. I think that it's maybe to do with some kind of event around Sawtooth Valley in Idaho. But the reason it appealed to me, I think, is because I could see where we could maybe make this more appropriate for a t-shirt. So this is maybe more of an example of how to take a design and make it more t-shirt appropriate. And I also saw an opportunity maybe to kind of declutter some of the elements here. So I think first off, this is a nice design. I think we need to make clear that this is perhaps maybe something that someone's been commissioned to create. So maybe there's an event and they've been commissioned to create the design, and obviously that's a situation where events and stuff usually need t-shirts. So if I was commissioned to do a design like this for the Sawtooth Valley Gathering, this is kind of how I would approach it. So initially what I did was I could see there's a kind of outdoor mountaineering kind of style type thing going on here. So I did a quick Google and pulled out some examples of the kind of thing that I had in mind. So it's this kind of outdoor adventure, the mountains are calling and I must go approach. So this is the kind of graphic style that I'm going for. And if we go back, you'll see that there's obviously there's elements of that. We've got the mountains, we've got the trees, we've got the hills, we've got the bear's paw. Um, so, but I think we can kind of make this look a little bit more modern and a little bit more kind of this outdoory style mountaineering camping kind of vibe, rough and ready approach. And I especially like these. I know these are the same design, but they're done in two different ways. You've got just one flat graphic here, and then you've got a kind of multicolored one here. But I like those, and that's kind of what inspired me to go with this approach. So what I'll do is I'll switch over to Photoshop and show you how I went through this process. So here is my initial sketch that I did in Procreate, and I've brought it over to Photoshop. So kind of rough, but hopefully you can see. Now, my main kind of idea here was that if I just quickly, I tell you what, let me grab the image. What I want to do is just quickly show you. Well, let's bring over to Photoshop. No. Let me do a quick screen grab. Sorry, I'm just trying to illustrate my point, and it would be a lot easier if we could actually see what I'm trying to say. So here's the original. So what I saw here was we've got this bear's paw and we've got this mountain, and the bear's paw is overlaying the mountain, and it's creating these kind of different shapes in between. And I just thought that looks a bit complicated and complex. You've got a lot of colors then going on because of that, which I think is not ideal for a t-shirt. And I think there's an opportunity there for us to make something a bit more appropriate. So my concept, as you can hopefully see, is to do the bear's paw kind of inside the mountain, inside this mountain range, so that they kind of fit together and produce this nice holistic graphic. So that was my concept, and then maybe with a more kind of stylized text across and kind of popping out the edges a little bit. So that's the concept. I think I kind of dived right into. So this was my then sketch, which kind of shows you what I had in mind. So we've got the bear's paw, and it's kind of creating this imprint that matches the mountain range in the background. So that was that, and then I kind of did this sawtooth over the top idea. Now, to be honest, I did spend a lot of time trying to mess around with colors here, and I've got two concepts which came out the other side, which I think are pretty decent. So it took me a while to decide whether to do this on a light background or a dark background. So this is the first one which I came up with, which I kind of settled on. Now, I think needs some work to tighten things up here, but I think the concept is solid. So we've gone with kind of a light green kind of background for the mountains, and the bear's paw obviously is kind of a cutout of that. And then we've got this kind of light blue for the snow caps on the mountains, and using a couple of different fonts, a kind of a serif font for the main thing, and then a sans serif, and doing the text on a bit of a skew, on a bit of an angle, just to kind of make it pop a little bit more. So hopefully you can see that concept. And I think if we compare it once again to the original, I think what you'll notice is the original is much more complicated, a little bit more. There's a lot more going on, and I think what we've done is really distilled it and created a nice t-shirt design. So we've created something that's going to really work on a t-shirt. I think it definitely could use some tightening up, especially with this is more of a sketch and could do with a lot more detail. You could also add some, like I was thinking, some clouds above the mountain ranges to make a bit more background there as well. But I think, I mean, obviously, let me know what you guys think, but I think we've got more of a coherent, almost a logo badge style design, which I think would work great on a t-shirt. And then I actually found, okay, I made a couple of changes here in this version. So in this one, what I did, don't know how well you can see, but there's a kind of green border around the mountains here, and I've lost that on this version. So I thought that maybe makes the mountains pop a little bit more, but I'm still not. I think the illustration basically needs reworking to add a lot more detail and make these look a bit more clearly like a mountain range. But I found this font as well, which I think works a bit nicer, is a bit more modern. Yeah, and I think we're 80% of the way there with that one. I would be relatively happy. I think as a concept, that's a nice, solid t-shirt design concept. You can see that, screen printed. It's only 2 colors. It's going to look nice, whacked on a t-shirt, and it's going to look professional and neat and tidy. So hope that one helps for whoever that was for. Bright Eye on Instagram. The font that was a question from Blue Tonic. So this font, the final one I went with, is called Fenway. And then this one is Fenway. So Fenway Sans and Fenway Regular. So I think that's a font pack I must have picked up at some point. But it's a nice modern approach. If you mean this one, I think this one is called That's Font Folks. So that's supposed to be the same font as like That's All Folks from, Looney Tunes or whatever it was. And so on. So there's Sawtooth Valley Gathering. See if we've got any comments here. Eileen, can you use Procreate for creating the finished design? I think so, Eileen. I think it can handle that. I've never done that. I think I'd still much prefer to bring something into Photoshop and finish it there. I feel like I have more control there, but I think you certainly can. I don't see any reason why not. And I think Procreate now has text support as well, so you can do fonts and stuff. Excuse me. Way better, says Accidental Fire. More clean and simple. Yeah, that's what we're going for. Really, that simplicity above everything else. B&A says agree. Clean, simple, and effective. Keeping trees at the bottom. Yeah, I think so. We've borrowed obviously a lot that was in the original. So it is. Whoops. It is obviously heavily inspired and borrowing from a lot of the elements of the original. I think all we've done is stripped away a lot of the needless stuff. We don't need a black border. We don't need 6 or 7 different colors to create something that gets the job done in a much more efficient kind of approach. So, yeah. Jacqueline says looks great and more like a t-shirt design. DS says I like that. Wish I got mine turned in. Pewter lock top, so it's now on the phone. DS says Trump says a lot of fun things. I'm going to try to design his "You should ask China." Is it too racist? I don't think I'm qualified to answer that one. DS, but I'm sure there's plenty of people done every kind of Trump design, and that's very appropriate because we're about to do one right here, right now. Richard says good, clean design, very readable. Iqbal says, just joined. Do you recommend using stock images? No, Iqbal, except for like decorative elements. So, for example, in the taco design, I've used this sunburst type of element, graphic element, which I didn't draw myself. So I'm fine with using bits and bobs like that. I think if you use clip art or if you use illustrations or even complete designs that you haven't created yourself, you are in very, very muddy waters, and it means that you can't really ever have a lot of confidence in the designs you created, you won't be able to go and license them elsewhere with much confidence. For example, offline or something like that. So yes to design elements that aren't the main focus of the design, but no to anything that's, so for example, this illustration that I've drawn myself, I would never take something that I hadn't created and use it as prominently as that in a design that I do. Okay. Pupil, is now the time to ask how to go about organizing copyright? I have a blog post on that topic. If you go to my website, michaelessick.com / what's it called? There's a blog post anyway called Print on Demand FAQs. And if you find that blog post on my website, I tell you everything you need to know about copyright in there. Okay. Right. Okay. Let's move on to our next one because we've got a Trump one, which should be fun. Let me find this one. So, okay, let me lose my screen there. Let's bring us back to, where do I want to be? Yeah, just here. And there's my website. And here is a design sent in by somebody. Sorry, I don't know your name, but this is a dump Trump design. So why did I pick this one? I think this is a clear concept. I think the illustration is nice. So we've got a decent likeness on Donald Trump there. And yeah, just a nice kind of simple concept. Obviously, it's going to be a very popular phrase, I imagine, if it's not already. But I think there's some room for improvements. So the kind of things that jumped out to me are, I think the colors could use some work, and I think I'm kind of getting the vibe that it's a sticker because of the white outline, but I don't know whether that's intentional or not. So I think there's some things we could do to take this concept and make it look more like a t-shirt design, as with the other examples we've used. So yeah, so let's dive into Photoshop and I'll show you what I did for this one. Okay, so Trump. Okay, let me undo all this so I can explain how I've got to where I've got to with this one. So here's my initial sketch. Not vastly different from the one we've just seen. Again, let me just quickly grab that one so we can bring it over and I can kind of compare and contrast. So the original here, you can see we've got Trump. I did wonder whether Trump in the original, he looks a little bit like he's too happy, like he's doing his okay sign, and he looks like he's A-okay. And I wonder whether if he had really been dumped in a trash can, he would look probably a little less happy about it. So I tried to do mine a little bit more angry. I thought that really because the design is based around the phrase "dump Trump," that we should make more of that phrase and really make the text as big as possible and make the illustration less important, if that makes sense. Obviously, the joke of him being in a trash can is very important, but I think we can communicate that without it being quite as large. So the good thing about a kind of trash can dimensions is it does fit, as you can see. If this is our canvas, which is broadly what a t-shirt design canvas would look like, the dimensions work. We can maximize this. We can get a nice big graphic that's going to fill the whole canvas, which is another important and useful thing to do when you're designing t-shirts. So that was my initial sketch. I think what did I then do? I think I then kind of tidied up my sketch a little bit. There we go. So, and then I had the idea of, instead of having our text over the top of the trash can, we could have it actually kind of within the trash can itself. So from there, I went ahead and colored in Mr. Trump. Gave him an orange face and some yellow hair and some flies. And then what did I do? I think around this stage I decided, yeah, I wanted to do it on a dark background, and we were going to do something like this. So this was round number 1. Now this isn't I've got a slightly improved version. But I think as a concept, it's solid. I think there's a couple of problems here. Namely, obviously, it's a bit scrappy, but I don't think Trump looks very good for a start. He looks like a big fat baby, which isn't a great likeness. And I think the text, the font choice isn't ideal. It looks, I think I've used a similar kind of one as we did in our taco, like a fitness college t-shirt font. But so I think that could use some work. And I wasn't sure as well about the kind of color choices for the text. So kind of rough layout wise, it's good. But here's my more kind of finalized version. Here we go. So in this one, I think we just kind of, I've gone for simplicity above everything else. And if we compare the two, so Trump's likeness here, I think I've got down a bit closer. I think the key to drawing Trump, by the way, if you are drawing Donald Trump, is to make sure you give him very squinty eyes, because he very rarely has his eyes open, and he has quite a straight nose, apparently. And obviously he needs to be quite peachy colored with yellow hair. And he does the ooh thing with his mouth. I think on this one he looked a bit more like he was blowing something. On this one he looks more like he's saying ooh. So anyway, there's Donald Trump. So I think I tidied up the kind of trash can graphic. I've decided that drawing the text in is a better idea. I would tidy this up if I had more time. But I think as a t-shirt graphic, it works quite nicely. And I think what I would do is I would go and add some kind of worn weathered effect, a bit like we did on the taco one. I would take some of this and kind of apply that over the top. But otherwise, I mean, I think it's really quite effective as a t-shirt design. It's simple. You get the message very quickly, very clearly, and we've used again 1, 2, 3 colors. That's it to get this design across. And I think that on a t-shirt is going to look really good. You know, if this is blown up and fills the canvas, the message is clear, the graphic is obvious. I'm not saying it's going to win any design awards, but I think as a t-shirt design, it is a very effective approach. So there's Dump Trump. Let me take some questions here for a second before I show you my final choice. Okay. Eileen, do you have a ratio of text-based to design-based tees? No. Well, obviously I do. I don't know the ratio. Obviously there is a ratio, but I do not analyze my designs in that way. I mean, like this design, is this text-based or is it graphic-based? I mean, you could make the case on both sides. I would say it's a text-based design, but it has a supporting graphic, which makes all the difference to the effectiveness of the design. So hope that helps. Much by Pal says 2 fonts just feel better for the eyes alone. It feels so weird to look at 4 or 5 fonts. Yeah, again, we're coming back to the main principles: simplicity and clarity. Anytime you have too many anything, too many colors, too many fonts, it complicates matters. And I think, look at this on your screen. It's as simple as can be, and the concept and everything is clear because of that. Richard B says, lose Trump, gain China. Punnybone have to go to meeting. Will this be available later? Yes, should be. The flies are money. Yeah, I should say, obviously, this is up to you whether you do designs like this. This is a design that could work, of course, whether you're Trump or Biden, whichever side you're on. It could be dump Biden as well. You could just do him in the trash can. Simple. So this is not a political statement here whatsoever. I mean, the design is obviously, but I mean, my adoption of it for this example should not be taken as an endorsement of any political candidate, as I am an Englishman and I'm not entitled to vote in America. Jacqueline says, smiley face with tears. Merch by Pal says, blowing the flies away. Yeah, exactly. Richard B says, do Pelosi eating ice cream in Chinatown. Jamie Lee should just make the eyes whiter to show the spray tan. Yeah, well, can't really do white eyes if he's squinting, which he often is, or it's best to illustrate him that way. B&A loves the design. Great. Fantastic improvement. Thank you, Jacqueline. If you want a designer to make this for me, how much should you pay? That's a really tricky one, Iqbal. I mean, depends on all kinds of factors. For a design like this, I don't know. It's really too hard to answer that question. I mean, I would charge you, at least a couple of $100 just for my time. Now, can you get someone to do a design like this for much cheaper than that? Yes, of course, you probably can. But remember, design is more than just lining things up and colors and positioning and stuff. It's about concept, as we've kind of illustrated here, and it's about understanding what it takes to take a concept and turn it into something simple and easy to grasp and to understand, and that works well on a t-shirt. So finding designers who can do that, I'm not saying they're few and far between, but you do have to dig. It's not like finding, I don't know, you can find logo designers very, very easily, and quite good ones, and you can find illustrators relatively easily. To find someone who's able to take a concept and turn it into an effective t-shirt design is actually, quite hard. In the same way that, a really talented logo designer is going to be quite hard to find as well. Okay, Chuck, I've got a question. Do you care about competition or search volume when choosing design topics? If so, how do you research on that? So personally, I don't spend too much time and haven't typically spent lots of time checking out competition and search volume. I have just taken a strategy or an approach, a model, if you like, of creating lots and lots of designs, churning them out, and creating designs that I thought were funny or original, or I could see some kind of pathway to distribution, whether that was on Amazon or whether that was on Etsy or whether that was an offline brick and mortar retail licensing path or something. Anything like that, I just would take an idea and churn them out. Now, these designs that we've done today, the Trump one, Sawtooth, and Taco Fitness, I've done these all this morning, and I would say I spent 2 hours or something to produce these designs. Obviously, I'm not saying they're finished or brilliant or anything, but with another hour or two, these would all be ready to go. And I would say that's a good approach. If you're a designer who can create stuff like this and you can churn out, 3 or 4 designs of this quality a day, if you do that for 6 months, a year, 2 years, then you are going to have an incredible portfolio of artwork that's going to make you money. Obviously, how much it makes you, how strong a portfolio is in the long term, those are all variables. But in general, if you're creating that amount of work, you can't help but be creating something of value. Now, it may be, of course, the 80-20 rule applies and all that kind of stuff, but you still have to create in order to hit those, those numbers so that you can actually, create a lot of. You've got to create a. What's the phrase? Quantity leads to quality. So if you create a lot, you will get better and you will be producing lots of good stuff. Okay. Parissa says, personally, I think this design is very disrespectful. It is, Parissa. I agree with that, and hopefully you won't take it personally because it's a design about. Oh, this is a example to show how I would go about creating a t-shirt design. But yes, whenever you're dealing with politics or religion or anything like that, there are going to be people who you're going to offend on one side and people who are going to love it on the other side. So. Okay. Jamie says I meant areas around the eyes, not the eyes themselves. Okay. Cool. Thanks for that, Jamie. And Samuel says, hi, Michael. Great live. One question. Do you use Ahref to research niche? Would it be worth using? I think if you know what you're doing, Samuel, then yes, using a tool like Ahrefs to dig out potential opportunities can be quite useful. I wouldn't say that it's something I've done myself, but if you know what you're doing, if you understand search engine optimization and opportunity spotting like that, then you can do that. B&A says, what's the 80-20 rule? The 80-20 rule is that 20% of your output is responsible for 80% of your results. So if you have 100 designs, then 20 of those designs will be producing 80% of the income that you make from those designs, and vice versa. So it's really just a way of saying that, you're going to have bestsellers, and you're going to have the majority of your designs are not going to be bestsellers, and you're going to have a few that are, and they're going to be responsible for the lion's share of your income, which is certainly true. It's simply a law of, I don't know, is it a law of mathematics or something or whatever? Eileen says it would be great to see you do a start to finish design. If you haven't already, Eileen, we did that a few weeks ago. I did the Nobel Prize Wiener design from scratch, although I didn't quite complete it. But yeah, okay, take your point. I've not really done a full completion, but yeah, I think we would have to do that from start to finish. We'd have to go from. It'd be best to do that not on a live, because it's just kind of difficult to really cover everything in a live video and keep you guys entertained at the same time. Okay, there is one last example that I picked to show you guys, and I'll just quickly share that one. I'll try to make it quick, and you can keep your questions coming. We'll do another 5 minutes at least answering your questions. So this is one that someone sent in. So if you can't see it too well on your screen, it says good vibes only, and it's a VW camper van with a Union Jack weathered effects over the top. So it's a nice design, and in a way, I'm kind of loath to criticize it in any way. But if it were me, and that's what I think is most useful here, I would go a different approach with this kind of design. So I get that it's going to be appealing to kind of British surfers and that crowd. The approach I've gone with, and I'll pull up my example here, is I'll just show you kind of my finished version of this one rather than kind of walking you through my process for the sake of time. But I would have gone something like this. So as it's again kind of a text based design in one sense. I mean, of course, it doesn't have to be. You could have just done a Union Jack VW camper van. It would have perhaps sold. But if we're trying to make a deal of good vibes only, then I would make the text the biggest thing on the design, and I would make the VW camper van a supporting element. So what I tried to do here was think about surfer style graphics, and this again is not really completed. I'd want to weather up the type, and I'd want to do some more kind of sea surf and things to make it, more complete. But I think as a concept, I think it works nicely, and I think I don't know whether I can show you a slightly earlier approach that I took with this one as well. Whoops. But I think to just explain it, I think, yeah, I'd want to make the most of the text. I think we're dropping my connection there, coming and going. Hopefully you can see it. But yeah, the idea is to keep the text the main thing, and just make that the biggest thing on the graphic. And I think this is more of a surfery style graphic, if that makes sense. So obviously we've got the sand, we've got some surf, we've got the surfboards, and we've still got the Union Jack in there. And hopefully that kind of makes sense. That's kind of how I'd approach it, to make it more of a, basically I want to fill the canvas, make the most of the canvas, and yeah, That's the plan. Okay, let me take a few more questions here before we wrap up. Yes, I think someone was asking what is Ahrefs. It's a SEO research tool, helpful for finding volumes on what people are searching for and things like that. Ray says, Michael, when using Photoshop, do you use a graphics tablet connected to your PC? I use my iPad connected to my Mac to use Photoshop sometimes, although usually I'll do all my illustration and coloring and stuff on Procreate, and then I'll bring it over to Photoshop, and then I won't need my tablet to do anything else. I'll do everything then from within Photoshop. Okay, and Eileen says she'll take a look at that video later. Right, so I think I've answered everyone's questions there. If you have any other questions before we wrap it up here today, please go ahead and post them. And I will just reiterate a few more of my principles. So, whoops, what am I doing? Present. So yeah, we did Dump Trump, we did the Sawtooth one, we did the Taco one. And if I could just hammer home any concepts from today's session, it would be simplicity. Hopefully you've seen that. We want to try and strip away any complications and get down to simplicity and clarity. And that means things like keeping a limit on colors, keeping the layout very clear, and keeping graphics nice and clear, so not too detailed and stuff like that. And also making sure the style matches the market. So hopefully, if I just go back and show you Photoshop again. So this, matching a surfer's market. We've got the Sawtooth one for matching a kind of mountaineering outdoors market. And we've got Dump Trump, again, a kind of political statement, big, bold, brash political statement. And the Taco one, kind of matching a fitness market. So 4 different designs, 4 different markets and styles and approaches. And hopefully that's been helpful. And that's kind of my point. Matching it to the style. Okay. Questions. B&A. When you don't make the design yourself and you use a contract designer, how did you find designers that you trust are making designs completely from scratch? That's a very good question, B&A, and it is an issue, especially if you are hiring designers. I hired my designers because they designed in a particular style, and I found their portfolios online. I took a good look through, gave them some test commissions and stuff, and basically because they're designing in a particular style, and they're both illustrators, so I should say that I don't really hire designers. I would say I hire illustrators because illustration takes more time than design, and there's often things I can't really achieve in illustration that other people can, especially if they're suited to a particular style. So, for example, one of my illustrators is a more cartoony illustrator, and one of them is a more realistic illustrator. So, to answer your question, how do I know they're making their stuff from scratch? It's because I know their style, and I know, a bit like if you were a counterfeit money expert or something, you just know if you see something that's not their style, it would be immediately obvious. So that's one way, is to work with someone because of their own style, and therefore you would know if they produce something that isn't their style. You'd be like, what's going on? Where's this illustration come from? This doesn't look like your stuff. But the other thing is that I've built up relationship with my illustrators over a long period of time, and I actually have them on retainer and stuff. So there's really no interest in them. I explain to them, look, I want original illustration. I give them very clear concepts. That's the other thing. My concepts that I give them are very clear. So if they came back with an illustration that was not like the concept, then I'd know that it wasn't, well, they've not fulfilled the brief for a start. But if I could get, an illustration that was like the concept I wanted, then I wouldn't be hiring an illustrator in the first place, if that makes sense. Okay. Iqbal asks a question I've just answered. Obviously, he didn't know I was about to answer it, but do you get them to create the entire t-shirt design or just an illustration? Usually it's just an illustration, Iqbal, as I just said, and I will kind of do the rest. I'll do the text. I'll decide on colors. I'll often take their illustration make a few tweaks just to kind of make it more t-shirt appropriate. But hopefully that helps. Jacqueline says, Michael, I bought your book from your website. I live in the UK too, so will it be posted from the UK? Yes, absolutely, Jacqueline. We post our books locally. That's my mum's job at the moment. And she will, if you've purchased, then it will probably already be on the way to you. Pupiful, do you have some info on how to go about generating ideas or finding niches? Yes, I have a whole video on generating ideas, which we did a few weeks ago. If you go to my YouTube channel and look for live idea generation, you'll be able to watch that. And there's some resources in the description of that video as well, which will prove helpful, I'm sure. Lisa says, thank you. Punnybone says, can you also share which tablet you use? It's an iPad Pro, Punnybone. Not one of the new ones, but it's a year or two old now, I think, but it still works great. Gary Hall, what do you use to connect your iPad to the Mac? Is it AstroPad? Yes, Gary. Although I think, do Apple have their own native one, I think now? I think I saw something about that. But yeah, I'm still using AstroPad and it still works fine. Riyadh says, please comment on improvements of designs in your list. I think you might be talking about the list of people who submitted designs. We're not going to be able to get through that today. Maybe we'll do that next week if people want me to go through the list and kind of comment on all the designs. But yeah, we won't be able to do that in this session. Eileen, who owns the design if you get someone to design in a certain style? I own the design because I've commissioned them and have a agreement that hands over all copyright to myself. That doesn't necessarily happen by default if you hire someone, so you do need to make that explicit. Make sure you have that in writing if you are hiring a designer. So yeah. Iqbal says thanks. Jacqueline says thanks. Pupiful says thanks, as does Kevin. Riker, hi Michael, in your Etsy shop, how are you dealing with Printful shirts currently being unavailable? Do you use Printify? If so, how do you manage orders from different countries? So yeah, Riker, right now we are basically handling everything manually, which is to say that when an order comes in, we are making a decision about who to send that to based on where the customer is and based on how many designs are backed up in different platforms. So we're using Printful still to fulfill, even though they are very delayed. We're also using some suppliers that are still available with Printify, and Printify does seem to be restoring different printers every day. Seems to be new ones coming back, not new ones, but old ones who have been out of action coming back on board. So yeah, we are beginning to use Printify again, and a couple of other suppliers here and there when we need to. So yeah, we are contacting most of our Etsy when someone's ordering via Etsy. We're contacting them and saying, hey, look, it's going to be a couple of weeks. Most people seem to be cool with that. Some people obviously want to cancel it, but yeah, generally we're managing okay. Orders are up across the board, almost seems to be the case. So yeah, doing pretty good. Accidental Fire says, dude, you're good. I can see why you make so much money. Thank you very much. I think just time and practice makes you a good designer, really, more than anything. George says, the Trump design is vector. No, the Trump design is done in Photoshop and obviously this could be converted to vector in a snap of a finger. So yeah, it does look kind of vectory. Wolfland, is that a good idea to do style over substance type of design, i.e. Banksy street art kind? Who would be the target audience? I'm not sure what design you're referring to though, Wolfland, but if you can clarify, I will try and answer that question. I don't know what you mean by style over substance. I don't know if you're referring to one of these designs or something else. So if you can just clarify, I'll tackle that. Gary says thanks. Thank you, Gary. Eileen says thanks. Vivian says super helpful. Thank you, Vivian. Michael Webster says, where can a non-graphic designer get design tips? You can get them from me, Michael. Make sure you subscribe, by the way, on the old michaelessick.com/subscribe so you can get the resources from today's video. I'm going to send out links to a couple of fonts, a couple of Starburst stuff that I've used, some free texture packs that I used in the taco design as well. So yeah, but apart from that, where can a non-graphic designer get design tips? And there are really an awful lot of YouTube channels, blogs out there that share lots of graphic design tips. I think if you can be more specific on what you're looking for, then that's always helpful. For example, searching for graphic design tips is going to be hard, but if you search for how to do an 80s style graphic, for example, if you want to do an 80s style design, then you'll be able to find case studies and tutorials of how to do that you'll be able to follow, and then you'll be able to say, oh, I know how to do an 80s style design now. And I think a lot of my design abilities have come through that. How do I do this kind of illustration? How do I do this effect? How do I do that effect? And once you've added all those to your skill set, then you can quickly go through and create styles and approaches, as we've kind of done today, in various different styles, various different styles. I keep saying styles, but that's what it is. So yeah, hope that makes sense, Michael. Soul Visible says, thank you for doing my camper van. So that was you. Thank you, Soul Visible, for allowing me to do the camper van one. What happened to the camper van one? Where is it? There it is. Yeah, thank you for that. Again, it's obviously a lot of this does come down to personal preference, so bear that in mind. But this is just kind of how, I would approach it. South London Reseller says, is Trump's face copyrighted? No, I don't think so. I think the approach usually is, if you're in the public eye, if you're a politician or an elected politician at least, then you are fair game for stuff. But obviously different platforms have different rules. Don't take that as a hard and fast rule on stuff. Vivian says, when you sell on Redbubble, do you repurpose the design to fit other merch, such as tote bags, mugs, etc., or do you only sell t-shirts? Vivian, I would sell on any product that makes sense, that the design makes sense on and works on. So some designs, of course, won't make sense on certain products. As an obvious example, if you do a design that's for men or for women, then it's not going to work on a dress. If it's for a man, it's not going to work on a kid's t-shirt. If it's for an over 60-year-old, whatever. But that's kind of my rule, is simply, if it works on the product, then make it available. Obviously it does take time on Redbubble to tweak every different product, but I think it's worth it in the long run if you can spare that extra couple of, extra 10 minutes on a design. Could mean the difference between a lot of sales, in the years to come. George says, thank you, George. And Michael says, great advice, thanks. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there then. Again, for the final time, make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. If you can hit like on this video as well, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, that would be great. Your comments and your feedback are appreciated. As always, I'll send out an email asking you guys what you'd like to see me do next week. And we will take it from there. So same time next week, we should be going live again. We'll do something. It's up to you guys what we do. But I hope this has been a helpful session. I hope these designs have inspired you or given you some tips and tricks and maybe given you a different way of looking at things. But most importantly, keep your designs simple, keep them clear, and go out there and make some great designs. Reza says, is uploading the work directly from the Illustrator correct? For example, in PNG or JPEG, or need a touch of Photoshop for completion? I don't think I've ever had a design come back from a Illustrator that I've uploaded straight away. I'm almost always tweaking, even if it's just the position or the scale of the design on the canvas or whatever. I'm always doing something to kind of get it ready for upload. Hope that helps. Richard says thanks. Ray says thanks. And George says just liked it. Thank you very much. All right, guys, I'll catch you next week. Thank you for joining me today. Hope it was helpful. And like, subscribe if you haven't already. All right, see you guys next week.